Welcome back to another live episode of Dynasty Theory, a proud member of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast Network. I'm your host, John Bauer. You can find me on Twitter at the Bauer Club. Guys, I am jacked tonight. So much news, so much going on that we finally can really dig in. But before we get there, I don't want to skip over the fantastic introductions. I am joined by Dan Lamagna, that is at FF Coach Dan on Twitter. What's up, Dan?
Man, no doubt we are like three kids opening like presents under the Christmas tree this week with all these free agent signings. Absolutely stoked. It's been a blast of a week. The Rock Zo energy drinks came, the PlayStation came, 20 free agent signings. Spent a lot of time on my rosters and acquiring draft capital. It's been a blast. So really excited about tonight's show.
And then to my right, I am joined by Mitch Sorensen. That's at DynoMC on Twitter. What's going on, Mitch? I know you were excited about New England.
I'm very excited about New England, but I'm not excited about all the signings. Like the best running back so far, I think, is Malcolm Brown. Maybe Carlos Hyde is the best one. Like, I want Chris Carson to sign somewhere.
Well, if we're going to skip over Aaron Jones, but I think you're talking about
that doesn't count.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So tonight, there's a lot we want to talk about, and we can go so many different ways with this, but I want to start with the free agent signings that we've seen thus far. And very quickly, let's go through the quarterback position. We saw Jameis Winston another year in New Orleans, Cam Newton another year in New England, Andy Dalton getting some dynasty life, getting some value pumped back into him, 1 year in Chicago. And then we just recently saw Jacoby Brissett 1 year in Miami. Dan, what are your thoughts here? Obviously not the biggest of names, but still certainly some dynasty super flex implications.
Oh, John, man, you just brought like a smile from ear to ear with some of those names you listed. I think Mitch was being a little bit of a Debbie Downer to start the show. Personally, they're not excited about these free agents. We still got more time, Mitch. Let's not, all in 1 day, 2 days. Those running backs are going to go soon. A lot of stock rising on my dynasty rosters, specifically Cam Newton. That was like a rebirth to me. As you guys know, I've got a couple rosters that I was a little bit nervous about that. And not only, is Cam back, but the supporting cast that they're building around him is very encouraging. In the GOAT Bill Belichick, I trust. I think he's putting that team in the right direction. I know Mitch is excited about talk about the Patriots tonight and that direction. Andy Dalton's a big one. He's got him. You guys know the 20th round of our One Dynasty startup, and then there's a starting quarterback now for the Bears. I really had a good feeling that he was one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't think he's a long-term solution for the Bears, but when you need depth and you need a starting option, you can get him at a value. I had him, and I think a lot of owners who backed up Dak and had to deal with that injury last year had Dalton just sitting on a roster, and you at least got some value now. So I think it's a plus for now. Now, drafts upcoming. I don't know how excited I am about the Bears and their direction. We'll have to see how that plays out.
And it did not take long. Not even 3 minutes in for my first error of the night. And I got to start a chalkboard. I forgot about Ryan Fitzpatrick. You guys, you got to remind me, JB, Mr. Fitzmagic. So let me ask you, Mitch. Mm-hmm. You have Cam Newton, like I said, Jameis Winston, Fitzpatrick, Dalton. Sorry, Jacoby, we're going to skip over you for this. How would you rank those four moving forward? You're in a startup. Who are you willing to pull the trigger on first? You're in an existing league. Who are you looking to acquire, and what might that price look like? So let's rank those four first.
Okay, so it's going to be Cam Newton first. I mean, we could get into that offense when we hit the tight ends later. Yep. But let's go Cam, Fitzpatrick, Dalton, then Jameis probably. And I mean, they're probably a second is going to be fair in a 12-team league. I think getting a first for someone like Cam or Fitzpatrick is going to be really hard still. I think that's going to be really hard.
If I could get a first for any of them, I'm going to have to go to Verizon to get a new phone.
The problem always is we say a first, but no one's going to give it, and no one's probably going to give you a starting quarterback for a second either. So it falls in that weird in between. I think you could get one for Fitzpatrick. I don't think you can for Cam at this moment. But I just wanted to talk about New Orleans real quick because I've seen, and I want to get your guys' takes on it because I've seen a lot on Twitter saying, hey, they're going to do dual quarterback. Like, I don't see that happening. I think that is some weird fallacy that's going around. What I see happening, Taysom Hill is going to start until Taysom Hill fails. If Taysom Hill fails to be, an adequate starter, then I see Jameis coming in. But I don't see, we know that Sean Payton loves Taysom Hill. Loves him. Taysom Hill has been in the special teams meeting room. He's been in running back meeting rooms, all the different meeting rooms. This is going to be his first offseason to where, hey, you're the quarterback, you get a start. That's what I see happening. Like, I am not going out and buying any Jameis Winston shares because I think he is a backup quarterback at this point.
Well, wait, let me ask you, because in previous episodes, you even mentioned that you thought Jameis Winston was going to be returning to the Saints, but I thought maybe I'm mistaken here. I thought you said he would be the starter. So
I did.
Now you're whistling a different tune.
I'm changing because
and that's okay to change our minds.
It definitely comes down to everything we've seen so far, right? I mean, when you just look at that Saints organization, they never once have been like, Jameis is going to be the guy. We have heard them say Taysom Hill is going to be the guy. And so in my view, for the cost, I would rather just not even worry about Jameis Winston right now. If I'm probably not going to go out and try to acquire Taysom Hill either. But if I have to pick between the two, which one's going to be the starter week 1 of the season and play 98% of the snaps, it's going to be Taysom Hill.
I tend to agree with you. I do think Taysom Hill is going to get the first crack at it. I honestly did not expect Jameis Winston to go back. Whenever we talked about it throughout the offseason, well, I act like it's August here. Throughout the early stages of the offseason, I said that Jameis Winston was going to get paid and go elsewhere. And that's what I fully believed here. But with Jameis Winston, it's a $12 million deal for this year, but a lot of that is incentive laden. It's Mitch, you described this really well, that these teams, they can give these contracts where it's incentives that are not believed to be reached.
Yeah, exactly. There's a different word for it. I can't think of what it is right now, but it's based off your prior year stats. So the example that I used, Chris Carson, if someone wanted to give him a deal, hey, you're going to run for 1,000 yards this season, you get $5 million. That's going to be included in the salary cap. Now, if they go to someone like Carlos Hyde, say, hey, you need to run for 1,000 yards this season, that's not going to count on this year's cap. It'll count on next year's cap.
And I think, and do not quote me on this, but I believe Winston's cap hit, like, isn't it like $3 million, $2.5? Like, it's minimal because it's all like we said. I'm sure my wording is completely butchered here, but incentives that are not expected.
Yeah, it's like not likely to be reached or something like that. That's what it's called.
Right. So you talked about first round picks. We can throw away the first round pick conversation here, and we don't want our listeners going out, well, this is my expectation.
Right.
But I think it's going to be tough. And Dan, you can talk about this in a little bit more detail. You have Cam Newton on several rosters. If I offered you, let's say, like the 206, is there any chance that I'm getting Cam Newton from you? And I know that it's not an absolute, or it's not very
specific.
Yeah, it's very team specific. Is Cam Newton your quarterback too? There's a few different factors here, of course.
I'm going to say you're probably not, because my glass that was before this week half empty now is half full again. And when I look at my rankings, and I've spent a lot of time on him this week, he could be like, he's kind of teetering on like the back end of my second tier quarterbacks. When I say second tier, I'm like 13 through 24. So he's on the back end of that second tier to maybe the beginning of the third tier, but he's got upside. He's got potential to do more. Like, I really do believe there is something to learning a new offense, getting COVID, having zero weapons, just getting healthy for the first time. So I think New England's investing in him. I think he's determined to prove it, and I want to have him as my quarterback. And I think there's a big gap between him and the rest of the quarterbacks you guys are talking about right now. So if we went into a startup draft, I may acquire Cam Newton. I'd be interested in targeting him. The other 3 quarterback situations, I do not want anything to do with. I do not see myself putting myself in a position where I would draft any of those 3 as of today.
What about Fitzpatrick super late, though? Because he's going to be the latest guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's more than likely going to be the starter. And he's great for fantasy. Like, no matter who is out there with him, like McLaurin doesn't even have to be on the field. It doesn't matter who it is. Fitzpatrick is going to throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns and maybe 6 interceptions. That's just up in the air each week.
At cost, I think Fitzpatrick he's the one. If we're going to compare potential 2021 production versus cost to acquire, whether it's an existing league or a startup, he's going to be the guy that I'll be looking at. And just to wrap up quarterbacks, my rankings, and Dan, let me know yours after this. It would go Cam Newton, Fitzpatrick. It's so tough because the expectation is Dalton's going to start here in 2021 for the Bears. Is Jameis going to start like you just talked about? But out of all 4 of those quarterbacks, again, excluding Brissett, Jameis is the only one that potentially has a future beyond 2021, even though there might not be anything in 2021. So, but I'm still going to go, I'll go Dalton over Jameis, but I'm looking at those first 3 in a 1-year window. And what can I get out of them in 2021? Dan, wrap up the quarterbacks.
Yeah, Cam clear 1, and then I'm literally looking at Jameis, Taysom Hill, Andy Dalton in my rankings right now, all next to each other. So if you just want to call it Jameis, although I am a little bit undecided, Mitch makes some strong points where I could see Taysom being the more confident, the coaching staff having more trust in him. But I think that coaching staff is also kind of hoping they have something in Winston. Like they're saying, hey, maybe we could develop this guy. We know he has tools. Let's see how hard he works. We're not going to claim anybody the starter because we know both of these quarterbacks got to bust their tail to put us in a good situation. And then I struggle with Washington a little bit. Like, to me, it's just dynasty. Ryan Fitzpatrick is 38 years old, and I do not see myself in any of my rosters taking a 38-year-old quarterback in dynasty. If he slid to my QB4, QB3 if I kind of messed up and it just kind of fell that way. So I'm kind of I'm rooting for Heineken too, personally, man. I know everyone loves Fitz, man, but he was gutsy. He had some moxie at the end there. But I'm also a Cowboys homer, but Washington's going last on my list. I like this, the potential of the Saints offense. And then with Andy Dalton, I'm really going to be watching the Bears offensive line. And if they could just protect this guy and somehow bring A-Rob back, and then you got Mooney, maybe he could be a quarterback there for 2 years because what options do they have? Who knows? But
real quick, I just want to say on Andy Dalton.
Wait, Mitch.
I know. I'm stealing your words.
You just made fun of me because recently I've been going with, hey, guys, real quick before we move on, real quick. And now you're doing it.
But this was actually going to be really quick.
Okay.
All I was going to say is Dalton on the Bears, I don't see him bringing A-Rob back. I don't see Allen Robinson being like, you know what? He's my quarterback. You take him out. They're already looking to move Anthony Miller. Mm-hmm. What's he going to do? Throw 400 passes to Cole Kmet? I mean, there's a lot of Twitter who would love that, right? And I would actually enjoy it a little bit too. But that offense just doesn't look good. I know they're going to go out. They're going to bring in more pieces. But right now, just looking at it, it's a bottom 3 or 4 offense in the NFL.
Let's move Tariq Cohen into the slot exclusively.
And then
let's just run the ball with David Montgomery. Let's give him 500 carries for all I care. But real quick, I do want to mention that Cam Newton, that contract, again, just like Jameis Winston, it's really focused on incentives. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if he's exactly in the clear yet, especially with what New England's done. Who knows if they throw a curveball? They move up in the draft. They do something that we're not really expecting. But I still think Cam Newton, again, looking at the probability of things, he's the guy out of this group of quarterbacks I would prefer, ignoring value in a startup. But now, Mitch, you're on the edge of your seat because there were so many high-profile running backs. Malcolm Brown to Miami, Carlos Hyde to Jacksonville.
That's it, boys.
And then I want to touch on Aaron Jones really quick. Aaron Jones got the 4-year extension, $48 million. And I got into some debates and conversations with people about A.J. Dillon. And I have to believe they were people that just acquired A.J. Dillon at a premium. And somebody said to me, well, things could be a lot worse. How? You went out, you acquired A.J. Dillon with the assumption that Aaron Jones was gone, Jamal Williams was gone. In fact, Jamal Williams is. But even if he's on the wrong side of a committee, that's not what you just went out and paid for. That's my biggest issue there.
Definitely. And people are saying, well, now it's a 1-2 punch. A.J. Dillon is just taking over the Jamal Williams role. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. A.J. Dillon cannot do what Jamal Williams does on the field. He's not a good third down back. He just isn't. That is not his skill set. And that's fine. He's still a good running back. But saying he's just going to take over whatever Jamal Williams did. No, that cannot be further from the truth.
I like that. I mean, A.J. Dillon, he had 2 targets in 2022. Again, we talked about the Packers so much last week. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but that was just something that really threw me off a little bit. But if you acquired A.J. Dillon in the second of your rookie drafts last year, you're still okay. You don't mind that price you paid. But if you recently acquired him, that's a different story. Dan, Malcolm Brown, Miami, Carlos Hyde, Jacksonville. Any thoughts there? And maybe not necessarily for them, but Myles Gaskin, James Robinson.
I'll start with the low-hanging fruit of Miami. I think they're just building a good running back room. I don't think it really means too much for fantasy other than, as you're building your deep bench or in handcuffs, if someone got hurt, got dinged up, if there's any movement, I'll keep an eye on Malcolm Brown in Miami. I don't want to doubt him, JB, because I did that to you a long time ago, and he kind of he's like that, rash that don't go away and remains relevant. But I don't think there's too much significant there in Miami. We have to see what happens moving forward. But the Carlos Hyde one I loved from the perspective of I'm drinking the Mitch Sorensen, James Robinson Kool-Aid, and that was just a nice backup running back that will spell Robinson, keep him fresh, but isn't any risk to James Robinson's starting job. We've had Urban Meyer on record, I think, given a bit of a vote of confidence to James Robinson, and I backed that up this week. I traded my boy Zeke, which is a little painful for me to do, along with Mark Ingram, who in Dynasty, who cares, in a 207 for James Robinson, Lombardi Lenny in a 205. And my thought process is I think Robinson could be close to Zeke. He's a lot younger, obviously, so there's even a ceiling that could maybe someday surpass him. Hoping Pollard dips in there. Banking on Lombardi Lenny going somewhere good, so it gives me 2 starting running backs, and then I've got some targets in the second round where maybe it's just a minimal bump, but it might be the difference of me getting my guy or not.
You mentioned Mark Ingram, and another guy that slipped through the cracks here, but he signed with Houston, the Houston Texans. And
Yay.
Is it just me, or did Houston sign 10 guys? I don't know who they are this week. They're just signing guys left and right with none of them having a fantasy impact.
Yeah, if Mark Ingram scares you off of David Johnson probably wasn't that guy for you to begin with. But my thoughts real quick on Carlos Hyde. He brings that familiarity to Urban Meyer. He coached him in college, and this probably is the best case scenario. It would have worried us if the Jaguars went out and got Chris Carson on the first day of, not first day of free agency, legal tampering period. But Carlos Hyde, not really too much of a concern. And the argument I'm seeing there is, well, this just means James Robinson's not going to get 85% of the workload. He wasn't going to get that this year. That's the argument people are making. But again, we talk about the potential for an increased workload in the red zone, in near the goal line. That's what's exciting us. But let's say he dips down to a 70% market share. That's still going to be okay.
Yeah, if James Robinson was going to get 85% market share, and that's what everybody thought, he'd be running back 4, running back 5 probably at worst. But no one's expecting it. That's why he's going running back 15, 16, 17.
Right. All right. Sorry, Malcolm. Sorry, Carlos. We're going to move on here. Some wide receiver talk. Do you think this, guys we'll get into them under awaiting a contract, but I feel like the wide receivers kind of shot themselves in the foot. And somebody that I thought played it really well, and maybe it was just by chance or his agent really pushed, but Corey Davis getting that 3-year contract right off the bat in New York. So we have Corey Davis to the New York Jets. Nelson Aguilar, 2 years, $26 million for New England. Kendrick Bourne, 3 years, $22.5 million at New England. Marvin Jones, 2 years in Jacksonville. And then recently we just heard about Emmanuel Sanders in Buffalo finalizing things, once they're able to. Mitch, overall, again, let's stick to the guys that have signed or intend on signing here. What are your thoughts?
So Marvin Jones, I think what Trevor Lawrence is walking into is probably a top 10 wide receiver core in the league. I mean, they got DJ Shark, LaVisca Chenault, and Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones is the perfect guy to put in a wide receiver room with those other two. And then you look at Corey Davis.
Does it really quick, Marvin Jones, does it surprise you that whole Los Angeles Rams thing fizzled out? Or do you think that was more narrative based by the media and maybe the dynasty community than anything else?
That's right. He just held up his fingers for the cash, and that's what it was. The Rams, I don't think the Rams are still under the cap yet. I don't think they've even completely done the Goff and Stafford trade yet, because I don't think either team is completely underneath the cap. And then I was just going to hit on Corey Davis. Corey Davis is a perfect one as well. You have Mims. We'll see if Crowder is still with the Jets. It looks so far like they're going to keep him. I figure they probably would have cut him by now if he was going to be gone. So I think those are just two really good signings. Then as far as the Patriots go, they just need guys. I mean, they have N'Keal Harry, Julian Edelman, who hasn't really played a full season forever. And so they just needed guys. And I actually really like the Nelson Aguilar signing.
Yeah, 2 years, $26 million. They have the money. I'm sure we don't know I don't know the exact specifics, at least. Maybe one of you two do, but I'm sure there could be an out after year one there. Dan, Corey Davis, I have a feeling you're not too excited about the New York Jets landing spot. Still a bad taste in your mouth. Maybe you like Nelson Aguilar. Maybe Kendrick Bourne. Maybe he's a big sleeper moving forward.
Out of all those guys, I probably do like Nelson Aguilar the best. Only because like everyone just kind of bashed on it when he went to New England. And before he went to New England, we were all talking about he's kind of a sneaky play. He had a really good season. You know, there's something there in Aguilar. You know, there's some value later in the draft. So I think they're investing in him. I think him and Myers in some capacity. I think the tight ends are the number one receivers. But I just think there's something there. I think he's the guy that could get some separation, get some deep balls, make some plays. I think he's, going to have an occasional drop or two, but he's a solid receiver. Corey Davis, he's like a big mystery, and I just still have so many questions marks about the New York Jets, starting with their quarterback room. They need to sign a good running back yet. What do they do in the draft? Do they solidify that O-line even more? And then, hey, if Darnold gets some time back there, maybe there's something there in Corey Davis, but I'm just not settled yet. And I think that Kendrick Bourne's he's just a blocking wide receiver, depth piece.
Yeah, I think a few of those make a lot of sense. The Marvin Jones one, a great veteran presence. But again, from his perspective, as they say in the movie Jerry Maguire, show me the money.
I think Marvin Jones, John's going to give them 2 good Marvin Jones type years. I think it's just a solid play for Jacksonville.
And he's somebody that if you have him on your dynasty roster, that's a veteran that can help you win. And if you're looking to acquire him, maybe you can get him for a third come time rookie drafts. You're not going to have to move a second. I would be shocked if you had to move a second. But again, it's going to depend on who has him and the league dynamic. Mitch, before we move on to the tight ends, Corey Davis going to the New York Jets, how much do you believe this impacts Denzel Mims? And do you think it is going to dip into Chris Herndon season? I feel like it's Chris Herndon season every off season here.
Yeah, I don't consider Chris Herndon a real tight end until he actually stays on the field for more than 4 or 5 games. But as far as Mims, I think that stuff just helps. Like Mims isn't CeeDee Lamb. He's not Jerry Jeudy. He's not going to be a guy that goes out there and immediately says, hey, I'm getting 110 targets this year. I think Corey Davis is the perfect guy to where Corey Davis, A.J. Brown, right? A.J. Brown didn't get a ton of targets, but he did a good job with the targets that he got. And I think that's something that Mims could do. I don't think any of us are expecting Mims to go out there and be a wide receiver 2 this year. Maybe a wide receiver 4 in fantasy. And really at the price that you got him at in rookie drafts last year, that's a really good, really good starting point for him.
I just worry about that Jets wide receiver core in general just being average. When they get tough matchups, you just shut down Corey Davis and Denzel Mims. How much production are you going to get out of them other than a sporadic week or here or there?
And I still do think it seemed like it was picking up steam a few weeks ago and it kind of disappeared. But I do think they move on from Jamison Crowder. I think it's like $2 million in dead cap So it makes a lot of sense. And then maybe Mitch, he lands somewhere fantastic for us in our 40% rostership.
Oh, yeah, 40 is a little low. I think I'm like 60. That's all good.
I'm around 40. All right, tight ends. Who would have thought we'd be so excited to talk about tight ends? Jonnu Smith, 4 years, $50 million, New England Patriots. Hunter Henry, 3 years, $37.5 million, New England Patriots. Are we excited about the landing spot? Do we think they're going to cannibalize each other too much? Dan?
I'm thrilled for the landing spots for Cam Newton. I like the landing spots for both tight ends because I think we all believe they're going to be heavily involved, and there's enough, there's going to be enough production to go around. But it does kind of cap. Like, I was super high on Jonnu, thinking he'd be 10 touchdown guy, but no doubt Hunter Henry I think is going to dip into those red zone touchdowns, and then Cam's going to run some in. The running backs are going to run some in. So I do think it takes some of the high upside. Like, I don't think they could catch in my rankings now the potentials of the Godards, the Fants, the Gesicki's, the Ingrams. I just think it keeps it behind those guys. They're still great. I love them on my rosters. But I would have rather just be in one. Jono's a really good blocking tight end. I mean, he's a gadget guy that could be a weapon in the red zone. He's a guy that could take one to the house because he's his speed. He's a freak athlete, but he will block a lot. And then I think Hunter Henry might get a little bit more receptions than Jonnu.
But don't you think a lot of people are going to share that sentiment and their price is going to reflect that? Whereas yesterday at this time, well, wait, when did Hunter Henry sign? Was that today?
Today was Hunter Henry. Yep.
Was Jonnu today too?
Jonnu was yesterday.
Everything's one big day. Okay, so at this time last night, Jonnu Smith, he very well might have been going, let's say, tight end 5, 6, 7. Oh, yeah. But now, because of Hunter Henry being there, and I get it, that price is going to dip, but it's also going to dip for Henry. But if you believe that offense from a passing perspective is going to funnel through the tight ends, this presents a perfect opportunity to look to acquire them at their new reduced price.
See, here's my issue, right? Is like, I love it from an offensive standpoint. I think something that Bill Belichick has always done is he's always been great with matchups. What we're seeing on the defensive side of the field right now is everyone wants to run 3 cornerbacks. They want to play their safeties, and their linebackers are super light. So what is the obvious thing to go against that? You run 12 personnel. You have 2 extremely athletic tight ends that could take advantage of any linebacker or safety that's on them. And then all of a sudden you have 250-pound Cam behind him who can run whenever he wants. Damian Harris is perfect for that. Sony Michel does a good job with that. And so looking at this offense, I love it. But as far as tight ends and fantasy goes, I would be absolutely shocked if either of them hit 50 receptions and 600 yards. Because like Cam Newton offenses just don't throw enough for that to happen. Like, if there was one, if it was Jonnu, I could be like, I could really see tight end 6, tight end 7 for him. But they're both going to eat into each other. And Cam Newton offense they're not a high volume passing attack. We know that Cam Newton wants to run 10 times a game. And then they're going to have all the handoffs. And they have all the backs to throw it to. And then they have Julian Edelman, who Cam Newton had a really good rapport with last year before. Edelman got injured, right? I was trying to think if it was steroids again, but it was injury, right?
It was injury.
Injury last year, yeah.
Right. So, yeah, that's just my issue with it is I don't think the volume is going to be there for the tight ends to excel.
I think we're going to be really relying in the fantasy industry on those touchdowns of those guys. Like, you're hoping that they each get 1 touchdown in a game and that offense is driving the ball. Because if you don't get that touchdown, one of them might get the catches and the yards and the other may not. Like, it could be a little bit of a chess match guessing game week to week. Hey, which tight end's going to get some more targets? You could end up with like 3 for 30 from one while the other guy has 4 or 5, but he's got the touchdown. It'll be interesting to follow.
I was offered a trade earlier today, and it was immediately after I tweeted out about my optimism overall, especially at the reduced price for Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. And it was a 2 PPR tight end premium league. I was offered I was offered Hunter Henry for my Julio Jones straight up. And I got a little greedy. I wanted to accept it, honestly. I got a little greedy and I tried to swap my Jamison Crowder with his Michael Pittman as well. And it was rejected. And then I went I had a work meeting, work always getting in the way. And when I went to look at my phone, another deal was completed. It was Hunter Henry for Corey Davis. In 2 PPR, I still want Hunter Henry there.
Yeah, but 2 PPR is such a low percentage of leagues.
What about 1.5 PPR?
That doesn't move the needle for me at all.
So
I would rather have
Corey Davis?
Yeah.
Dan?
It's like a wash. I mean, maybe there's a little more upside in Davis, so I might lean Mitch's way, but it's close.
All right, so if we're in a typical PPR, and we got to take off our tight end premium hat for a second.
Right.
Jonnu Smith, where are you valuing him in terms of 2021 picks? And let's assume super flex. So 207, 208, 209?
Late second.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it would probably, I don't even know if I'd offer a late second. It would have to be like an early third. Because
in non-premium, that's still Pat Freiermuth territory.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's certainly Brevin Jordan territory. I think both of those guys are there. I think really late second for either of them. There's just other options I would prefer. So yeah, I can get that. And I know there's a lot of people, when you talk about tight ends, their philosophy changes. And, they might look at it one way, whereas I certainly look at it another. And when you throw a premium, things get really thrown out of whack there. But I'm a guy, and Mitch, you are too, that we love our tight ends and tight end premium. And depending on the price, I still might be shooting a shot there.
Well, we love the ones that have volume too. I think George
correct.
is kind of the only one who plays in a really run-heavy offense that everybody still loves. But you look at Kelsey, Waller, Hawkinson, Fant, where we'll see where Pitts goes. But all of the highly ranked ones are in pass-first offenses.
Right, and more of the focal points of that
focal point. Yeah, that's a better way to put it.
Yeah. And then one last thing, free agent signings. Mitch, you're a big offensive line guy. Kansas City Chiefs, Los Angeles Chargers. They did some big things. I am loving this for especially the Chargers because regardless, Patrick Mahomes could play behind 5 cardboard boxes, and I'm still going to like Patrick Mahomes. But for the Chargers, they bring in Matt Filer and Corey Linsley. And I believe Linsley was made the highest paid center in the NFL. Yep. But it's great for Justin Herbert. It's great for Austin Eckler, and obviously the passing options as well there. So anything to wrap up the free agent signings? Do we miss anybody? Anybody else you just want to talk about really quick?
I just want to touch on those O-lines a little bit there. I think very smart football moves, but I think both teams still have a little bit more work to do in those areas. The Chiefs get the stud tackle, but they just lost 2 stud tackles. So really you're only replacing one. It was injuries that took it, so I think they have a healthier elite tackle now versus an elite tackle that you don't know when you're going to get them back. They'll get Austin Reiter back at center, who opted out because of COVID last year. So I think they've shored up one side of the line. They could probably use one more guy. And then I think for the Chargers, their line was a big liability last year. That was a below average offensive line. So awesome signing at center there. They've got some more competition and depth now with the other one, but I think they still could use another lineman or so. But so go trending in the right direction, John, for 2 offenses that we love, but keep an eye out for both those teams. Hopefully they each get one more lineman.
It sounds like the Chargers might be improving in Coach Dan's dysfunction rankings. Maybe a little bit, just a little bit.
Well, those Chargers keep trending up weekly, man. Mr. Herbert, loving them.
They're looking good. They're looking really good.
All right. There are a few guys that aren't looking good, maybe looking ahead, awaiting a contract. So a few guys that really pop off here. Kenny Golladay, Curtis Samuel, Juju, Will Fuller, I don't even know why I put him there. Yeah. Sammy Watkins, T.Y. Hilton, Kenyon Drake, Chris Carson, James Conner, Leonard Fournette, Antonio Brown, Gerald Everett. Again, I mentioned this earlier. It seems like these higher end wide receivers might have shot themselves in the foot. And it's funny because I was thinking about this. We saw reports that wide receivers, well, everybody was like, I want a 1-year deal because the reduced cap number, and the wide receivers that got signed so far, besides Emmanuel Sanders, they were all multi-year deals. So do you think that's the holdup here with these guys? Maybe Kenny's saying, No. I'm not taking a 2 or 3 year deal. I want the 1 year deal. Give me 13, 14 million for 1 year, and then I'll go out after that next contract next year. Dan?
That's tough to say. I think I think all these higher end guys like Galladay, Samuel, Juju, I think those three specifically have a market. There's got to be at least 2-3 teams, I would think, competing for them, and they're trying to get their highest dollar or best situation. Curtis Samuel intrigues me the most. I just think he's a speedster that's very versatile, very young. I'm really intrigued to see where Curtis Samuel goes. Galladay, we're all kind of chomping at the bit. You know, he's that number one receiver that a team could build around. Juju, there's some arguments whether he's a 1 or a 2, but these guys are impact players. I think maybe Aguilar kind of set the price, mark here early. Him and Marvin, you see where they went in the price range. These guys are going to fetch some more dollars. It's just a matter of where.
If I'm any of those receivers and I see that Nelson Aguilar gets 2 years, $26 million, you got to think that they're looking for a little bit more. And Will Fuller, I think he's going to be the wild card because we don't know how teams are going to view him with the suspension. And again, it's only one game here carrying over. Is it 1 game?
Yep.
And
only one.
Yeah, but does this issue pop up again? Mitch, your running backs, I think we might see a little bit. I think you also might be on mute. So,
oh no, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, but no. So the good thing about the running backs is all of the good landing spots are still available. You have the Jets, Atlanta. I still think the Buccaneers are still looking for. Hopefully, Lenny goes back there. And then I was going to ask you, John, what about Pittsburgh? Like, what's the local talk in Pittsburgh? Are they just? Is everyone, hey, they're getting Williams in the draft or Harris, and that's just how it is? Because I haven't heard one word about them actually like wanting to bring in a running back.
The Steelers haven't picked up somebody relevant in free agency, I think, since 98. No, but I don't pay too much attention to the local sports radio. So anybody not familiar in Pittsburgh, we have the Yinzers, and I've done that awful accent. Yin's going down south side tonight. You're like, and those are the types of people calling in to the local. I can't listen to that. I'm sorry.
It's understandable.
Can't do it. But I would be shocked. James Conner clearly not coming back. I don't think James White, Leonard Fournette, Chris Carson, Kenyon Drake. I would be surprised if any of them came to Pittsburgh. I do think they attack the position in the draft. I think that's the route they go. Seattle's an intriguing option. Leonard Fournette might be getting interest there. And listen, I don't even want to ask Dan, because if Leonard Fournette goes to Seattle and he's the lead back, let's say he gets a 2-year deal, Dan's might have him as the number 1 overall pick in startup. So
edging out McCaffrey.
Yeah, getting away from that bias a little bit. Mitch, I would be intrigued as well. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's all these back, but that's what I was saying, right? Is there's so many good landing spots left that's what's going to take over Twitter. All we need is one of these backs to sign in one of those places. Then all of a sudden you're going to actually see good trade bait happening. Because what we saw previously is we saw like people getting mad and putting AJ Dillon on their trade bait. And there hasn't been any running backs that you feel good trading for right now. There's just like no news coming out. But once we see Chris Carson signed, or say it's James Conner, say James Conner goes to the Jets, he's immediately someone that's going to draw some attention, some interest on the trade market.
We haven't seen that lately. A Pittsburgh running back go over to the New York Jets. That really worked out well last time. But another mess up on my part. I forgot Jamal Williams on my list, and we spent, I think, 37 minutes talking about Jamal Williams last week.
That's why
we covered him.
So I don't know how I forgot it. Do you guys think, Dan? Do you think once we see one of these running backs go, that is the turning point here and the domino effect? It's just like boom, 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 boom. I don't even know who the standout is at this point. Is Chris Carson the top option, do you think?
I think it's like either Carson or Fournette. I mean, I think it's those two and then the rest. I think Lenny, we have a pretty good idea where he's going. I really do hope he does go to Seattle, guys. Not that I don't like Tampa Bay, but I can still see there being some Rojo weeks and Keyshawn Vaughn increasing a little bit. So I just think there's a clear opportunity in Seattle, and it's a perfect system. So I'm going to take the bias aside. He's not going to skyrocket up my rankings, but he's going to solidify where he is as kind of like an RB3. Just would love that landing spot and feel good about my investment. And then Carson, I think we're just all hoping he finds that good landing spot, whether it's Arizona or Falcons. We would love to see, if he could just get one of those gigs, that'd be really nice. Connor's like just still that wild card to me. Like there's just upside, but risk. I mean, I think his value will be right where it was. We'll see.
Mitch, is it fair to say Fournette and Carson, 1A, 1B, however you want to look at them, and then maybe like Kenyon Drake, James Conner, and then James White and Jamal Williams paired together?
I think how you listed it was really good. Yeah.
And then maybe within their own tiers, they would flip and flop depending on the landing spot. But I think Arizona, I know there's a lot of questions about this rookie class. Maybe it's not as deep as people would like. It doesn't have the high-end Barkley, Zeke, players like that.
Jonathan Taylor.
But still, there are going to be teams that, hey, we can address this in the NFL draft. Mm-hmm. We don't have to spend an arm and a leg on a running back in James Conner that might be healthy for 4 games.
Isn't it amazing that Leonard Fournette is he might be the back that the NFL likes more than Chris Carson, right? And we look back, 8 weeks ago now, and in Dynasty, you probably could have had him for a third.
Yeah. And then he went on that run. And then he became Lombardi Lenny. And he was the one whose value really spiked. And again, I'm not saying he's a first-round rookie pick value, but he's one that went from irrelevant to having some life shot into him there.
I think where I like him over Carson is, okay, so we have the pedigree. He took advantage of his recent opportunity, as you're mentioning, John, but he's just healthy and solid. Like you take more risk when you look at Carson and Connor because of that durability. So if we have these guys in that same cluster, I'm going to take the one that's going to be reliable. Similar with, hey, there's risk with Will Fuller and Sammy Watkins at wide receiver, where Curtis Samuel, I think, is going to be more likely to be out there. So I like Samuel over a Will Fuller, like I would like Lenny over Connor or Carson.
All right. So, Mitch, I'm going to put you on the spot here. We've seen some of these landing spots play out. Let's go with one of the running backs for you. Kenyon Drake, Carson, James White, James Conner, Leonard Fournette, Jamal Williams. You get to pick one where they go. Who is it? Where is it?
Chris Carson, Falcons. I think he just fits everything they need. And, but Dan brought up a good point. He has to stay healthy. If he doesn't stay healthy, and then it's just another year like he had in Seattle. But he is a guy who can be a top 10 running back every single week in that offense. I mean, he could catch the ball. He runs extremely well. So he's a guy that I just want to see him get in a good spot. And if I'm going to pick anybody else, it's not going to be James White. It's not going to be Kenyon Drake. It's kind of going to be if Fournette can get that lead role like in Seattle. But, he could share it with Penny too. So maybe it just is Chris Carson in Atlanta or with the Jets.
And then James White, the report came out, well, the Buccaneers might be interested.
Shocking.
Whoa. No way. Dan, out of the list of wide receivers that we talked about, where you can handpick one receiver to one landing spot, who are you looking at here tomorrow? And I hope all this happens tomorrow. It's a Wednesday. We're looking to get through the week, get over that hump. What better way to do it than have 12, 13, 14 more free agents land somewhere?
I'd still love to see Aaron Rodgers, for our boy Packy, who's, always in our chat, go to Curtis Samuel, go there,
Wait, time out real quick. I was like, Aaron Rodgers isn't a free agent. Okay.
No. I want to see him get a wide receiver. Like, I really love to see, like, Samuel was probably, I said earlier, is probably the guy I'm highest on. I'd love to see him go with like an Aaron Rodgers and just put on a clinic there. So that would be my favorite receiver and probably favorite landing spot, and kill a little bit of that Green Bay buzz of neglecting wide receiver.
And then, I didn't mention Rob Gronkowski getting extended. Mitch, you were excited about that because there were some leagues that you didn't get a tight end early, or you may have picked up Gronkowski off free agent list early last year, and he's bailing you out once again, man.
Dude, it's every single league. I maxed my fab out on him. I didn't care because I mean our leagues are pretty deep anyway. So
I maxed my fab out on Drew Sample.
You sure did. And so I did it, and it was horrible for the first 12 weeks. I mean, he wasn't doing anything. Then the last part of the season, Brady started getting involved in it. It worked out pretty well ROI wise.
Yeah.
That was a nice score. I had some, not as much as you there, Mitchell, but I got some fab to spend on Gronk. It was definitely a nice one. And, we knew he was going to land there. I'm more curious now, no one's really talking about OJ Howard. And there's always that. I've been an OJ truther for the longest time. I still hope there's something left with him. He's such an athlete. And I know Gerald Everett's still out there too. It's going to be interesting to see where he lands. So there's a couple of tight ends that'll be interesting to see if they could go somewhere good.
Yeah, Gerald Everett, where I don't even know.
And you got Ertz on the trade market too there. So
no, Jacksonville got Chris Manhurts from Carolina.
My bad.
Man, I really thought Hunter Henry was going to go there. I really did. That was. I saw Henry's name in like the little blurb on Twitter. I was like Jacksonville, and I saw New England. I was like, you got to be kidding me. But anyway,
final thoughts.
Dan, final thoughts. What is this? Episode 109. 109. What do you have for listeners?
This has been a blast these last couple of days of free agency. We know this is one of our favorite times of the year. Previous Dynasty Theory episodes, we talked about the coaches and the direction and the GMs, the direction these teams are going in. We're very excited. Like the draft will be the kind of next thing, especially in watching the quarterbacks. But as we watch the direction of these teams, I want to go back to Mitchell's Giants. Listen to me. Mitchell's Lions there, the Detroit Lions. I was listening to Peter King's podcast, and their new GM was super interesting. You talk about analytics, and I went through this last year with Mike McCarthy in Dallas. He's, talking about how he studied analytics, and I don't know what analytics he studied because it didn't come together in the football season, whatever analytics he studied. But I'm going to throw out like this fancy saying that Brad Holmes, the GMs of the Lions, had. And he talked about, they said like the Lions management was so impressed because he had fusion of scouts' intuition into analytics. The fusion of the scouts' intuition into analytics. And he talked about the accountability of it. And Mike McCarthy didn't talk about anything about accountability. He just talked about, looking at Pro Football Focus. And Holmes mentioned Pro Football Focus and Next Gen Stats. They're sites that all three of us and our listeners have referenced. And he just says, hey, the eyes say one thing and the analytics say another. He wants to know why. And, we talked, you guys love the analytics. I love the film. You got a GM there that's looking at and has had some success in past drafts of finding guys in the middle rounds. So Mitch, to your Lions there, man, as we look at the direction, he said some really things that caught my interest and I'll watch. And hey, maybe Detroit builds a little bit in the draft. So as we watch these dominoes fall, let's see what direction these teams keep moving in.
Yeah, I cannot wait for tomorrow. And I'm sure that Fitzpatrick news last night, that broke at like 11 Eastern. It was a little bit later. So I keep checking my phone. I'm like, is something going to drop here tonight? Mitch, what do you have for our listeners? Final thought here for the 109th time.
So a lot of people are getting a stimulus this week, right? We could see a lot of leagues starting.
The Patriots spent theirs.
Yes, this Patriots spent all of ours, obviously. But we're going to see a lot of leagues start. And I will say this. Make sure it's a good commissioner. I have never seen a league fail because of a good commissioner. I have seen many leagues fail because of bad commissioners. I haven't seen a league fail because of bad owners very often. A good commissioner could take care of that. But if you have a commissioner that you can't put faith in, you can't put faith in that dynasty league, so you might as well play redraft. That's it.
That's great advice. And before you close this out, John, I just want to say we were hoping for we didn't quite get breaking news, but there is one report right now that my boy Curtis Samuel is a target of the Washington football team.
That would make a lot of sense.
Does that hurt Antonio Gibson?
Yeah.
A little bit of that hybrid role.
I don't think anyone's going to use Curtis Samuel as a hybrid, really. I think that was just the Panthers sort of thing because they didn't have McCaffrey. That's just my pick. Yeah. I'm
just asking the question because then you saw Curtis Samuel, and this was not even a rumor. It was just the Curtis Samuel Urban Meyer connections. Well, maybe he goes to Jacksonville, and it's like, well, Curtis Samuel and Laviska Shenault, that seems a little redundant to me. But yeah, let's get Washington some more weapons, and then Ryan Fitzpatrick. Let's get one great fantasy season from him. So hopefully we see something happen there. All right, we want to thank everybody for tuning in. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Dynasty Theory FF. Stay safe, be kind to each other. Let's get some more free agent signings tomorrow. Have a great night. Thanks, everybody.